For more on this manhunt, let's bring in international security analyst Sajjan Gohel. Compare and contrast this, if you will. What do we learn through this case? Germany managed to let him slip away. Italy, with their system of routine checks to blunt illegal immigration, managed to corral him. Does it kind of illustrate kind of what we're seeing in terms of security efforts in Europe? There's different cases all over the place.
In many ways, Mike, that is the case. It's disconnected. It's not integrated. And add into the mix of that France, because we know that this individual traveled from Germany to France and then to Turin in Italy, and then he went to Milan. And it just illustrates the fact that yet again we see another terrorist in Europe using the Schengen zone, freedom of movement, to be able to travel openly. The only difference is that prior to Amri's plot in Berlin, most of the terrorists were plotting and planning attacks. This is an incident that's taken place following an attack. So again, it's a worrying dynamic.
You talked about Schengen, the open borders in Europe. He's killed in Italy. It's about 1,000 kilometers away from Berlin. It sort of is reminiscent of Salah Abdeslam. He was the mastermind of the Paris attacks, got away despite a manhunt, hiding in plain sight in Brussels, planning more attacks. When he was finally, that was 4 months later when he was finally arrested. What needs to be done on the security side?
Well, in many ways, the case of Salah Abdeslam should have rung alarm bells back then, because as you mentioned, he was supposed to be one of the suicide bombers in the Paris attacks. He bailed out at the last minute, dumped his rucksack, fled to Belgium, where he hid in the district of Molenbeek for 6 months in the capital of Belgium, effectively the capital of Europe, which meant that there are safe houses for ISIS fighters across Europe, where they feel comfortable, where they can base themselves, they can hide, seek sanctuary. This is a European-wide problem, and we're seeing networks emerge throughout the continent. Now, some are self-radicalized. They carry out attacks in the name of ISIS, just seeking inspiration. But there are others, like Amri, who seem to be part of a network, more established, more connected to handlers and the leadership of ISIS. And that is a worrying dynamic, because Amri is not a one-off. It could be part of a series of more elaborate plots in the coming weeks and months that Europe may face.
So do you think it's likely he got help along the way then?
I would say it's very possible. And one thing that's essential for European Union counterterrorism agencies is to work out, when Amri left Berlin, traveled to France and then to Italy, who was he in touch with? Who was he communicating with? Was he using mobile phones? Was he trying to use encryption data services? Were there individuals helping him along the route? Because what we're seeing is the uncovering of a new network. We knew about the French, Belgian network. This is now a German network, and we still don't know its full ramifications, its size and its scope. But we know that it does start with Amri. I don't think it ends with him.
Briefly, if you can, one final question on airplanes, airports in 2016. What's going on there? We've got the Malta hijacking, but as you know, there was a hijacking in March of an Egypt Air flight. It's also believed another Egypt Air jet was brought down by explosives in May. And then we also saw airports targeted in this year, Brussels and Istanbul. What do you make of all of this?
Well, unfortunately, aviation security is no less safer than it has been previously. There are still the threats that concern us. They may be hijacking, it may be political, as seems to be the case with the recent events from the flight that left Libya. But then we also know that ISIS wants to target airports. It's not so much about bringing down aviation systems, but about targeting airports at arrivals or departures, as we saw in Brussels and in Istanbul. And that is a real concern going into 2017, as ISIS wants to carry out more attacks, especially as more of their fighters are leaving Raqqa and also other parts of Iraq and Syria, because their blowback could result in attacks across Europe, especially targeting transportation infrastructure.
Sajjan Gohel joining us from London. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.